الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In this video today we'll be discussing about an important issue regards to marriage. We're not going to be discussing the fiqh opinions or the detailed matters regarding marriage itself. We're going to be discussing about an issue, some advice regarding this issue of how to prepare before you get married. Yani some of the things, steps we should take before that first meeting. Now, first and foremost, we must understand that marriage is something recommended in the religion. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaju." Whoever among you has the means to get married, then get married. So we know that in the Quran and Sunnah, that a person, if they feel that they are in the situation of need of getting married, they should get married, because this is recommended in the Quran and Sunnah. Now, we're going to be discussing about how does one prepare for that meeting, or how do they arrange for a meeting. Now, we know that in Islam, a person we're not have the mindset of marriage. Our view of marriage is not in Islam, is that we don't go around meeting people and getting to know them in un-Islamic ways. Because Islam in itself protects the family, protects the honor of the person, the male and the female, to ensure that they don't fall into any fitna and fasad. Meaning, the element of marriage where you're meeting, getting to know your spouse, as some people say in the West, get to know them, test them, see what they're like. Our religion of Islam doesn't actually have this viewpoint. The viewpoint in Islam is that you meet them in an environment which is safe and protected for all parties, so that they don't fall into dangerous situations. What that means is that in Islam, we don't meet the person to fall in love with them before marriage. That Islam is protecting the man and the woman from having decisions being made through emotional means, meaning where you don't see the real factors that are considered for your benefit and for their benefit. I'm going to talk about this inshallah later on, because I don't want to confuse anyone now. So what we mean by this is that the first thing that we do is we arrange a meeting of a potential spouse. Now, how do we meet somebody? How do we meet them in that environment that we're going to talk about? We meet them there's many ways of doing it, and usually it depends on the culture and country you're from. So in some countries, it's not like befitting for a person to go and speak to the local masjid. Maybe they don't have that in their community. Maybe it's done through the family. So they should use that as a method, speaking to family. But there's going to be things we're going to talk about this as well. There's other methods of where a person would approach the local masjid. In some countries, it's normal to do that. The Western countries specifically, I know that in some places it's fine or some communities or some cultures, it's accepted that they go to the local masjid and ask the community and find out. And in other places, it could be through friends. In other places, it's mostly done through family. So what we're saying is, whatever way you take, culturally applicable in your time and place, then you apply that way, because that's the best way to do it. Go through that means. But before you do that, this would be a common advice for whoever takes which route. Make sure that you have the first thing that I would advise everyone to do before they even go into this issue of marriage is to learn about marriage. Understand the masail and fiqh matters and study them in detail, and know what's expected as a Muslim and a Muslimah of what is required. As a Muslim, we mentioned in our previous discussions in knowledge, we talked about this, where we said that a person should know what they're getting into when they're going in that field. So if you're going to open a business, you should have ilm of the fiqh of that subject. If a person is going down the route of going to do certain thing, in Islam we need to have knowledge of it, and marriage is one of those things. If you're going to open a business, you need to have knowledge of it. So what about marriage? This is something which is related to ibadah and where you're going to be connected to that person for majority of your life. So of course, and you're going to have children that will be impacted by it, inshallah ta'ala, or if Allah wills. So this means that a person needs to definitely see the ilm and fiqh matters regarding knowledge of having understanding of what is marriage, what is expected, what is my rights, what is his rights. This will then give a person a deeper understanding on, okay, I know where I stand and I know where they stand. That's number one. Number two, they should then speak to community members in their in their community, as well as people of knowledge, sheikhs. So maybe this could be linked with the first one, because maybe because in some cases reading about marriage in a book on your own it's fine. You can do that and you can learn the opinions of it like that. But also you could watch videos on YouTube. But this time you're gonna go and actually seek someone of knowledge or consult somebody with knowledge and understand what I'm looking for, to expect in this community I live in. So the book may be teaching you the Islamic rulings, but the Sheikh will be teaching you the things related to your community. And maybe that Sheikh has understanding that in this part of the world, or this place that we live in, or this culture that we're from, this is how marriage is done. It's done in this way. It's done in this specific method. And understand that in this culture we live in, as a Muslim and a Muslimah, this is what is expected from you, and this is what's expected from the husband or wife. As well as this, there's another thing that you need to understand, is that having that understanding also with the Sheikh will also, or that personal knowledge, a female one, if you're as a female going to seek knowledge from them, or speaking to community members that are experienced, having them giving you insight to what's expected. You might have this idea of a dream vision of marriage, but really you don't want it to be shot down when you get married and be like, what have I just done here? Rather, when you get married, you'll understand that, subhanAllah, I've now got married to somebody. This is what was expected beforehand, that there would be these things that may happen. So that idea of you thinking, I got married to somebody and they're not the way I expected, well, the Sheikh or the person of knowledge or the community member that you spoke to with experience, who's been married for a long time, will tell you, by the way, this is expected, that you're going to have to face these challenges. So be prepared for it and how you're going to manage to navigate through that. That way, when a person gets married, they don't have a shock to the system. They're not upset. They're not disappointed. They're not then feeling like an enmity towards their partner because they expected certain things. So that way they're prepared. And inshallah ta'ala, knowing that person who's been dealing with the community, like obviously they'll teach you a lot about marriage, but they'll teach you about the hikmah and the experiences that they faced, or through the community or through their own lives. So that would be number two. Number two is, just repeat it again because I maybe didn't make it clear. So number one would be studying marriage independently or through a personal knowledge about the rulings of marriage. Number two would be sitting with a personal knowledge or person with experience, both of them if can be done, through the community, understanding certain expectations of that community or where you're from, where you live, and what to be prepared for. So for example, I'll give you an example here. If a person is living in the West, they have an expectation of marriage Islamically, but then they also have a community where the society is living in a different way. So maybe there's a situation where you might have to expect certain things from your husband and wife regarding income. Maybe this could be less because of the way the structure of society is there, high cost of living, difficult to rent. All of these things are going to be things you need to navigate through. But you Islamically are expecting, I want my own place, I want this, I want that. But in that society, it may not be easy. So maybe you have to lower that because of the speaking with the people of community in the community. Maybe living in a Muslim country where the expectation of having a property and the cost of living is less, it's easy to get that and it's expected. Then maybe that person will now know that, okay, when I get married, it's not the same as somebody from the UK. There's a difference here, clearly a difference, because that person living in, for example, in a Muslim country, we're not going to name any specific places, but they are less cost, maybe cost of living is less, and it's easier for them to facilitate a property for their wife when they get married. So obviously there's a big difference here. That's why knowing that between the two differences, you'll be able to navigate through that. The third thing would be, and this is very extremely important before a person goes for that meeting or prepares to get married, would be having a short-term, medium-term and long-term plan. So I'd say long-term, medium-term, short-term, whatever way you want to put it, having these steps. What does that mean? So short-term plan would be ideally what I plan to do and how I plan to get married in the next few months. So if I'm going to get married in the next couple of months or next year or so, where I want to be after marriage. What do we want to do in the first couple of years, 2-3 years of marriage? That's short term. Medium term will be 5 years to 7 years. What I want to be doing in the 5 to 7 years of my marriage. And then after that is, inshallah ta'ala, 7 to however long you plan to envisage yourself to be in that time. So meaning, I'll give you an example. A person gets married, and in their first 2 to 3 years, they want to have planned that they have. So we'll give an example of somebody who's making a plan of their life as a male and a female. Yani we could say this is both for both. They plan to have these steps. So in the first 2 to 3 years, I want to have made sure that we have bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Of course, it's all with Allah's plan. You plan, but you make those plans with dua to Allah and asking Allah for success. So you know that whatever happens, if it goes out the plan, is from wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's better for you. So for example, the first 2 3 years, I want to be married. I want to make sure that me and my partner have done umrah, for example, in the first 2 3 years of the marriage. That's like a short-term goal. The medium-term goal would be 5 to 7 years we have had children, and our children are studying Quran and Arabic, and they're basically getting on their way to basically start learning Arabic. Or me and my husband will have been fluent in Arabic in 5 to 7 years time of this marriage, or memorize the Quran. And then the last step would be in 10 to 15 years time, I envisage my children are doctors, or we've opened a business together, or we've moved to a Muslim country and settled there if we're coming from the West, or we are in a Muslim country, we've established a business, we've made opened a school. I mean, these are long-term goals, right? They're not going to happen overnight. They're going to take 5 to 7 years, or maybe 15 years to set up. So having those plans ready in your head, so that when you meet that person, you know what you're planning to do. So if you want to go, let's say your plan is short term or medium term is to be in a Muslim country, then you're going to a brother who's saying, I don't even want to go to a Muslim country. You automatically, there's no link here, then that's a problem. You can't work together, and that marriage might not be a good idea to get married to that person. But then also, there's something that we go back to again, having those discussion with the people of knowledge and people of wisdom. You also write down the expectations, what you want from your husband or wife, and what you as a wife expect from them, mathalan, or what you expect to do in your life. Mathalan, I want to wear niqab. My husband doesn't want me to wear niqab. Now that's something, can you accept that or not? Most likely, and I'm saying this 99% of the time, sisters who believe wearing niqab is something they want to do and they want to be firm on that way, it wouldn't make sense for them to marry somebody who's going to make them take it off, if that's what they feel heavily strong about, right? It wouldn't be right for him to do that to her, and she shouldn't really actually marry someone like that if they know they're going to clash on that point. Or can he change his mind on that? So there's things that she needs to write down, or he needs to write down what he just has to expect, and those things cannot be kind of lowered. And there are those things where she's flexible and he's flexible on. And there are those things that they cannot accept. So there's those things that must happen, there's those things that are in the middle, I can change my mind on it, and there are those things that I can't. So example, a brother, he has a beard. He's like, a sister wants to marry a brother, and she expects that he has a beard, like as in he doesn't shave, or he doesn't trim, or he doesn't keep a different length of beard. She expects expectation of him having a lihya, a beard. Now she goes to a meeting and the guy says, I shave, I don't grow my beard. For him, that's his way. She doesn't accept that. Now that's her thing. Another example, she expects that he prays salah, or he expects that she prays salah. Those are things she must do. He cannot be 50-50 on this. So those things you cannot bargain on, right? Those are the things that you need to take to the meeting, or the person who's looking for you beforehand, to make sure that you meet that person who has those criteria, so those expectations. Then there are those things in the middle, which I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, like as in I don't mind doing or not doing. An example of this, we'll give an example of this, a very good example of this, is if a person, I'll give you an example, a sister is like, I don't want to work, but I wouldn't mind working. Yeah? Or the brother's like to his wife, would you mind working in an Islamic environment? And she's like, I'm open to the idea, but I don't really mind not working either. So in that case, that's something where, if, for example, he says to her, I don't want you working as a wife because I want you to be at home. She's okay with that already, because she's also, I don't mind if I worked, I don't mind if I didn't work. You know what? So those things are comfortable. Or he says to her, we're going to move to a Muslim country tomorrow. Are you okay with the idea? I'm in the middle of that. It wasn't something that I expect, but neither was it something I don't want to do. So it's in the middle. So those things you can write down as, I'm okay with them. There could be things when it comes to in the future. You might have plans that you want your children to be homeschooled. In that case, or you want your children to go to a madrasa school, or like a specific school where they only teach Quran, Islamic studies, but alongside the science and all the other things. But maybe your husband only he wants them to go to a specific private school that's got the best name. Right? This is something you need to have already written down. I want my expect that my kids will be homeschooled. I expect my kids to be learning Quran and hifd and all this. Or my kids should go to this good school, but I'm 50-50 about them having a school that also incorporates Islamic sciences with it, like Quran, Hifd, and Arabic. So these are things you must write down, because then when you go to that meeting, you have a clear idea of what you're going to speak about. Because a lot of people, they ask the question, what do I talk about in that meeting? The point is that when you have these expectations written out and all clear, you will know definitely what you want in that person and what you don't want. So this is going to take a bit of time to write down. But again, this does not come until you've learned about marriage, the rulings of marriage and what's required from you and from him, and also spoken to the people who experience, so they can give you a bit of idea of, Yani, this thing that you're expecting here is not really like realistic. It's not going to work. You know, you're expecting these things, yani, they're not realistic. It's just not going to happen. So that's why they will tell you that these things you're expecting are not going to really work. So you can know that, okay, this won't work. And also, they could also tell you expectations which you think are Islamic. You know, they're having those two stages before of learning about it and have speaking to people experience. That will give you a good insight on, okay, right now, yeah, I've thought that this is what it should have been like. But really it was something that wasn't in the religion in the first place. So you just had an expectation that was un-Islamic. So why are you doing that for? So that's why you drop that expectation by learning about it. So having these kind of two stages beforehand will make this list easier. Because then you'll drop expectations which are not from the religion, and also you'll expect things, you wouldn't expect things from the other side being from the religion. You might think that this is something that, it's it's flexible. And inshallah ta'ala, this is where it will lead to the meeting. Now, I want to stress this point very importantly to every single person that's listening, that the whole purpose of having the wali involved in the process is for the benefit of you as a sister and you as a brother. Firstly, it protects the brother by making sure that he doesn't have emotions, and he's not led by emotions in this situation. Now, you might be wondering, what do you mean, brother? Like, you're saying that emotions will lead me. We're saying that when you go to that meeting with the wali involved, you're not going to have the opportunity to get closer to zina, and emotions will lead you to that. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, as Allah says, don't go near zina. And this means by أي وسائل إلى الزنا, يعني any way that leads to it, you should avoid it. So in this modern era of social media, where brothers and sisters are comfortable to talk to each other and not have the wali involved, and it creates a lot of fasad in the society, can open the doors to a lot of problems. We need to be careful of this and use the method that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated, which is using the wali and the family, because that would, the family being the male guardians in the family, if that's possible to arrange. And if there's not, then there's another, again, that's something that you need to speak to people of knowledge in your area about how they deal with that situation. But generally speaking, it's done through the male guardians in the household. If they're involved in the process and they're the ones who are communicating to the husband, it's good, because the potential husband, because this will save the sister a lot of problems as well, from emotional side of feeling, I love him, I like him, and I want to be with him, and she doesn't even know what she's saying yes to, because she's doing it through love, and he's also at the same time saying, yeah, we're going to marry, we just want to marry for the sake of marriage and be in love and forever. Like, yani, this is not realistic, and this doesn't happen. Then after you get married, you'll realize that a lot of things that you agreed upon were not really realistic Islamic things. You were just agreeing upon love and emotion, and in the end you clash, and it becomes a problem, because now I wanted him to pray, but he doesn't even pray salah. He was just a guy he doesn't even work, he doesn't even have a job, and I expected him to have that, but I was in love, I just done it for this is the disaster. It will cause a disaster effect later on, and very few times do people find the success in that way of doing it. So the reason why we say the wali is involved, wallahi, this is to protect the honor of the boy, the sister as well. And this is what I was going to mention as well, that if a man, for example, he can come and say, oh sister, I have this, I have that, I work in this amazing company, and I have my own apartment with a swimming pool and a gym, and I make this much money, I drive this car. She, Islamically, like, obviously he could say that. He could say that, right? But the point is that he said it all, but who's going to go and check it? Who's going to go and verify it? He could turn up to a house with a rental car if he wants. And he's like, I've got the car, I showed you, I wasn't lying to you, right? He could go to his mate's house and take pictures and say, this is my house, right? He could go to the company of his friend and say, oh bro, send me pictures from his friend, and say, yeah, you work in that place. But he doesn't have any connection to that lifestyle. And then you go and marry him, and before you even marry, you didn't even know he had this situation, yeah? And maybe he could tell his friend, look, bro, I'm going to have some people, I really need your house for like an evening. Can you give it to me? I'm just saying, I'm not here to make you think like this would happen. But I'm saying if the wali is involved, he will actually go and cross-check information, something that sister cannot go out of her way and do. She cannot go and see and meet him like that openly in public. It's not something that's normal and done in Islam. Yeah? In that way, it's done through the wali. So the wali will test this guy properly, and he'll go and check him out and maybe find out that he's actually lying and he's not really living in that circumstance. This is why the wali should be involved at all costs, because it's for the protection of the woman. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله. Allah says in the Quran that الرجال, the man, are the qawwam of the woman. They maintainer and protector of the woman. So they protect them from this dangerous situation. So it's very essential and important that we take this protection that Allah has given us to the sisters. So we take this method that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to protect the honor of not just the sister, but also to save her from any dangerous situations. And this is why the wali being there, Allah has put the man in the place to be able to test that man and get the best out of him. When you go to a meeting, the father should be making sure that the sister, is getting the best interest for her. That's his daughter, that's his sister, that's his niece, that's his granddaughter. These people need to test. That's his sister. So in those cases, we need to make sure that that is done, because we want to honor and protect the right of the sister, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all our families. So I hope that this has been a beneficial thing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for those that are listening. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it benefits those that are listening, inshallah, and it's beneficial for all. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.